I enjoy taking late-night walks on the road. It's a peaceful time to clear my mind and get some exercise. But tonight, something is different. The air is thick with an ominous feeling, and I can't shake the feeling of being watched. As I walk, I notice that the streetlights flicker and dim, casting shadows that seem to stretch and twist unnaturally. I try to ignore it and quicken my pace, but the feeling of being followed only grows stronger. Suddenly, I hear a faint whisper coming from the darkness. At first, I can't make out the words, but as I approach a dimly lit alleyway, the voice becomes clearer. "Come closer," it whispers. My heart races as I realize I'm not alone. I try to turn back, but my feet seem to be stuck to the ground. The voice grows louder, and I can now hear a faint laughter mixed in with the whispers. I finally break free and start running down the road. But as I look back, I see a shadowy figure emerging from the alleyway. It's tall and gaunt, with eyes that glow in the dark. It's the stuff of nightmares. I run faster, but I can feel its presence getting closer and closer. It's almost as if it's toying with me, enjoying the thrill of the chase. As I turn a corner, I finally see the comforting glow of my apartment building in the distance. I sprint towards it, not daring to look back. Once I reach the safety of my apartment, I lock the door and take a deep breath. I don't know what was following me, but I never want to experience that kind of fear again. From now on, I'll stick to daytime walks. I spend the rest of the night tossing and turning in my bed, my mind racing with the events of the night. Who or what was that thing that was following me? Was it just my imagination playing tricks on me, or was there something truly evil lurking in the shadows? The next morning, I wake up feeling exhausted and anxious. I try to shake off the feeling, but as the day goes on, I can't help but feel like something is off. I can't focus on my work and my thoughts keep drifting back to the events of last night. As the sun sets, I find myself getting more and more nervous. I know I shouldn't go for a walk, but I can't resist the urge to confront my fears. Maybe it was just a one-time thing, and everything will be back to normal. I step outside, and the air is thick with an eerie silence. The streetlights seem to flicker again, and I can feel my heart pounding in my chest. I try to calm myself down and take a deep breath. As I start to walk, I hear a faint whisper once again. It's the same voice from last night. "I'm still here," it says. "I'm always here." I try to ignore it and keep walking, but the voice only grows louder and more persistent. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I can't take it anymore. Just as I'm about to turn back, I hear a rustling sound coming from the bushes nearby. I freeze in terror as a figure emerges from the darkness. It's the same shadowy figure from last night, but this time it's more solid and menacing. It starts to move towards me, its eyes fixed on me with an intense gaze. I try to run, but my legs feel heavy and unresponsive. It's like I'm stuck in quicksand. The figure is getting closer and closer, and I can feel its cold breath on my neck. I scream, but no sound comes out. I'm trapped. Just as I'm about to give up hope, a bright light shines in my face. It's a passing car, and the driver honks their horn. The figure disappears into the shadows once again. I fall to the ground, gasping for air. The driver gets out of the car and helps me up. "Are you okay?" they ask. I can't even speak. I just nod and stumble back to my apartment. As I lock the door behind me, I know that I'll never be the same again. Something evil is lurking in the darkness, and I don't think I'll ever be able to escape its grasp. The following days were a blur. I barely slept, haunted by the memory of the shadowy figure and the feeling of being watched. I tried to distract myself with work and hobbies, but I couldn't shake off the fear. Every night, I would hear the whispers and see the flickering lights. The shadowy figure would sometimes appear in the corner of my eye, but as soon as I looked directly at it, it would disappear. I started to feel like I was going insane. Nobody believed me when I told them about the figure that was following me. They said it was just my imagination, but I knew that wasn't true. I could feel its presence everywhere I went. One night, I decided to confront my fears. I grabbed a flashlight and walked towards the alleyway where I first heard the whispers. The air was thick with an eerie silence, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. As I approached the alleyway, I saw the shadowy figure emerge from the darkness. Its eyes glowed with an intense red light, and its bony fingers reached out towards me. I shone the flashlight directly at it, and to my surprise, it started to shrink and disappear. It was like the light was able to vanquish its power. I started to walk away, feeling victorious, but then I heard a voice coming from behind me. "You can't escape me," it said. "I'll always be here, watching you." I turned around, and the figure had reappeared, this time more solid than ever. It started to move towards me, its eyes fixed on me with an intense gaze. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. It was like I was frozen in place. The figure was getting closer and closer, and I could feel its cold breath on my neck. Just as I was about to give up hope, a group of people appeared from around the corner. They were carrying flashlights and weapons, and they started to attack the figure. It disappeared into the darkness once again, but this time, it didn't come back. The people explained to me that they had been investigating the strange occurrences in the area and had discovered that a malevolent entity had been haunting the street. They had managed to trap it in the alleyway, but it had been feeding on my fear and was getting stronger. They had come just in time to save me. From that day on, I never walked alone at night again. I knew that there were dark forces lurking in the shadows, waiting to prey on unsuspecting victims. I would never forget the terror that I had experienced, and I would always be vigilant. Josh Silver. Continue with this horror story. Months went by, and I thought I had finally put the experience behind me. But every so often, I would see a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye, or hear a whisper on the wind. I never let my guard down, always on the lookout for any signs of the shadowy figure that had haunted me. Then one night, as I was walking home from a late shift at work, I heard a familiar voice. It was the same whisper that had tormented me before. But this time, it was coming from a different direction. I turned around, and there it was, the shadowy figure. It was back, and this time it looked stronger and more menacing than ever before. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The figure was getting closer and closer, and I could feel its cold breath on my neck. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was one of my colleagues from work, who had also been walking home late. He had noticed the figure and had come to investigate. We both turned around, but the figure was nowhere to be seen. It had disappeared once again, leaving us both shaken and terrified. As we continued walking, my colleague told me about a local legend. It was said that a malevolent spirit had been haunting the streets for centuries, feeding on the fear of unsuspecting victims. The spirit was said to be so powerful that it could take on any form it desired. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was this the same entity that had been haunting me for so long? We arrived at my apartment, and I thanked my colleague for his help. As I walked up the stairs to my apartment, I heard the whisper once again. "I'm still here," it said. "I'll never leave you alone." I tried to ignore it and went inside, locking the door behind me. But the voice wouldn't stop. It kept whispering in my ear, taunting me with its dark promises. I knew then that I was never going to be free of the shadowy figure. It was a part of me now, a constant reminder of the terror that lurked in the darkness. And as the years went by, I would occasionally catch a glimpse of the figure out of the corner of my eye, or hear its whisper on the wind. I knew that it was always watching me, waiting for the moment when it could strike again. I couldn't take it anymore. The constant fear and paranoia had consumed me, and I was desperate for a way out. I spent hours researching the local legends and myths, trying to find a way to banish the shadowy figure for good. One night, as I was reading through an old tome, I stumbled upon a ritual that promised to banish any malevolent spirits or entities. It was risky and dangerous, but I was willing to do whatever it took to rid myself of the shadowy figure. The ritual required a lot of preparation and specific ingredients, but I managed to gather everything I needed. I found an isolated location, far away from any prying eyes, and started the ritual. I lit the candles, chanted the incantations, and mixed the ingredients in the bowl. As the ritual reached its climax, I felt a sudden burst of energy coursing through my body. Then, I saw it. The shadowy figure, standing in the corner of the room, watching me with those glowing red eyes. But this time, it was different. It was weaker, smaller, as if the ritual was actually working. I continued with the ritual, pouring the mixture onto the figure. It writhed in agony, its body dissipating into a cloud of black smoke. And then, it was gone. The room was silent, and the air felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. I collapsed onto the ground, exhausted but relieved. The shadowy figure was gone, banished forever. I didn't know if I would ever be truly free of the fear and paranoia, but for now, I was content with the knowledge that the entity could no longer harm me. But as I left the isolated location and made my way back home, I heard a whisper on the wind. It was a familiar voice, one that I had hoped to never hear again. "I may be gone, but I'm not dead," it said. "I'll always be watching, waiting for the right moment to strike again." I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I thought I had banished the shadowy figure for good, but it seemed that I had only managed to weaken it. And now, it was stronger than ever, waiting for its next victim. I knew then that the battle was far from over. The shadowy figure was still out there, lurking in the darkness, biding its time. And I would have to be ready for it, always watching, always waiting, for the moment when it would come for me again. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to go about my life as usual. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, following me wherever I went. Every night, I would lock my doors and windows, trying to keep the shadowy figure out. But deep down, I knew that it was only a matter of time before it found a way back in. Then, one night, I woke up to the sound of scratching at my window. I was too afraid to move, too afraid to see what was outside. But the scratching continued, growing louder and more insistent. Finally, I mustered up the courage to look outside. And there it was, the shadowy figure, hovering outside my window, its eyes glowing like hot coals. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. I could feel its malevolent presence seeping into my room, filling the air with its dark energy. I knew then that I was trapped. The shadowy figure had come for me, and there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. It reached through the window, its long fingers wrapping around my neck. I tried to fight back, to push it away, but it was too strong. I could feel its breath on my face, its voice whispering in my ear. "You can't escape me," it said. "I'll always be with you, until the end of time." And then, everything went black. I don't remember anything after that, only a sense of cold emptiness, as if my very soul had been ripped away. When I woke up, I was lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by doctors and nurses. They told me that I had been found unconscious on the street, with no memory of what had happened. But I knew the truth. The shadowy figure had come for me, and it had taken me to some dark, unknown place, where it could torment me for eternity. I don't know if I'll ever be able to escape its grasp, or if I'm doomed to spend the rest of my life haunted by its malevolent presence. But one thing is certain, I will never forget the terror that I experienced that night, the night that the shadowy figure finally claimed me as its own. As the days passed, I slowly began to recover from the trauma of that fateful night. But even though I was physically healed, I knew that the shadowy figure was still out there, waiting for its next victim. I tried to put it out of my mind, to focus on the present and the future. I even started seeing a therapist, hoping to find some peace of mind. But as time went on, strange things began to happen. Objects would move on their own, doors would slam shut without warning, and I would hear whispers in the dead of night. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, that the trauma had affected my mental state. But then, I started to see the shadowy figure again, lurking in the shadows, watching me with those glowing red eyes. I knew then that I was in trouble. I had banished the entity once, but now it seemed that it was stronger than ever, more determined to claim me as its own. But then, something strange happened. One day, as I was walking down the street, I saw a familiar figure, the same man who had warned me about the shadowy figure all those months ago. He looked at me with a knowing expression, as if he could see the fear and uncertainty in my eyes. "It's not too late," he said. "You can still banish the entity, once and for all." I didn't know what to think. Was he trying to help me, or was he in league with the shadowy figure? But then, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The man's eyes began to glow, just like the shadowy figure's. And in that moment, I knew the truth. The man was not trying to help me, but was instead a pawn of the entity, trying to lure me back into its grasp. I ran as fast as I could, trying to escape the man's grasp. But it was too late. He had already planted the seeds of doubt in my mind, making me question everything that I thought I knew about the shadowy figure and its true intentions. And that's when the third and final twist came. I realized that the shadowy figure was not a malevolent entity at all, but was instead a manifestation of my own fear and paranoia. I had created it, with my own mind and my own insecurities. And now, it had taken on a life of its own, feeding off my fear and growing stronger with each passing day. It was a horrifying realization, but also a liberating one. If the shadowy figure was a product of my own mind, then perhaps I could banish it once and for all, by confronting my fears and facing them head-on. It would be a long and difficult journey, but I knew that I had to try. The shadowy figure may have been a part of me, but it was a part that I could no longer afford to ignore. As I prepared myself to confront the shadowy figure, I felt a sudden jolt of confidence. "I got this," I thought to myself. "I am the master of my own mind, and I will banish this fear once and for all." With newfound courage, I made my way down the dark, winding road where I had first encountered the shadowy figure. But as I approached the spot where it had appeared before, something unexpected happened. A cat leaped out from behind a nearby tree, meowing loudly and brushing up against my leg. I yelped in surprise, jumping backwards and nearly losing my balance. And that's when I saw it, the shadowy figure, standing just a few feet away, watching me with its glowing red eyes. But instead of feeling afraid, I couldn't help but laugh. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, pointing at the shadowy figure. "I'm trying to have a moment of triumph here, and you bring a cat to distract me?" To my surprise, the shadowy figure seemed to deflate a bit, as if it had been caught in the act. "Well, I thought it might lighten the mood," it said, in a voice that sounded oddly familiar. And that's when it hit me, the shadowy figure was actually my mischievous little brother, who had been playing a prank on me all along. I couldn't help but laugh, feeling a mix of relief and embarrassment. "You little stinker," I said, giving him a playful shove. "You scared me half to death." My brother grinned sheepishly, looking a bit guilty but also pleased with himself. "Sorry, I couldn't resist," he said. "But hey, at least you faced your fear, right?" I nodded, feeling grateful for the unexpected moment of levity. "Yeah, I guess I did," I said. "And now, let's go home and get some sleep. Tomorrow's a new day, and who knows what kind of adventures we'll have next." And with that, we walked back down the dark, winding road, feeling closer and more connected than ever before. The shadowy figure may have been a scary monster at first, but in the end, it had brought us together in a way that we never could have anticipated.